and it means to exchange or to change. So this location called Moriah was a place where something's changed or an exchanging takes place. And if you can see, there's a yod at the end of the mem vav resh, and the yod is inferring possession, in other words, mine. And of course you see the hey on the end, that's the feminine suffix or feminine ending that's indicating the ability to be fertile or receive seed. And if you were to take this based on how we've just broken apart and looked at it, it basically is saying this. An individual is speaking in the first person here. And this individual, this is what the name Moriah is declaring. This individual, this name is basically saying, I will exchange my place with Yah. Do you remember the phrase, let there be? When Yahweh's making a declaration that He is going to reveal Himself in the earth. Yahi, I'm going to reveal myself in the earth. How? By light. Well, this is exactly what's being said right here in this word. He's telling you who's going to exchange places with Yahweh or take the place of Yahweh in the earth, and you're going to begin to see how He would manifest Himself. And of course, we know He's talking about Messiah, who would be personified as light in the earth. Now again, what I'm sharing with you, the vast majority of it, you will not see in the King James English. There's another powerful anomaly in this particular verse. And if you were looking in the Hebrew, you'd see that there's a diminished mem right after this. It is the word mokeda, which is the word for altar that's used here. If you were to look at it in the Hebrew language, you'd see that the mem is by virtue of what the scribes did, it's diminished or small. And when you see that, it instantly, these scribal marks instantly should call your attention to it and make you go back and find out why would they intentionally diminish this letter. It has something to do with the intent of the word Melcheda, which means altar or hearth. And if you ever have a fireplace, you know a fireplace is called a hearth, or the top of the fireplace, if you were to set a grill there for cooking on, that could also be called a hearth. Well, the mem here, you've learned from our studies, means the source of origin, where something is from. It's the place that it's out of. Well, the mem can also represent the Hebrew word makom. This is a very powerful word because the word makom means the place. How many of you remember when Jacob has the dream? And if you go back and look at that particular passage back there in Genesis, you'll find that several times he makes reference to this place. This is the place. Surely this is the place. Yes, this is the place. And in every occasion, the word is makom. And the rabbis teach us that it's more than just an adjective. The word place, it's actually taken a noun form, and literally Mount Moriah, the place where Jacob dreamed, where Abraham offered Isaac, where Adam was created, where Cain and Abel offered their sacrifices, where the temple floor was dedicated, is literally the place. The place of what? The place of the manifestation of Yahweh in the earth. Are you following me? And as we start to break this word down and examine it, it leads me to believe that I must be at the makom. I have to be at the place. Because wherever that place is, Yahweh happens to be there and stuff happens. Can you say amen? Well, if you looked at the word makom, right in the center there you have the mem and then a vav, and then you have the kuf, dalet, hey. Well, the vav hints again at Messiah. He's the vav man. Then you see the kuf, dalet, which is the two-letter root stem. Kuf, dalet, hey is the three-letter stem. And this word kadah literally means to kindle, to build a fire, something that's about to be burned. And if you were to look at it, you could see that this altar also represents, as I was sharing with you earlier, the place where Messiah fulfilled the sacrificial ritual known as the offering of the red heifer. This same location is known as the Mifkad gate, or the Mifkad or Mifkad altar. Are you with me? Well, when you see this mem being diminished, it's inferring, of course, mem can also mean something that is in chaos. And I firmly believe that by virtue of the fact that the diminished mem is associated with the place called Makom, and the fact that Messiah offered himself as a sacrifice, it has to do with the accusations that were made against us. And this mem being diminished means that the accusations against you were diminished because of what took place at this altar. Are y'all seeing this? Help me out now. That's why in the New Testament, when it talks about the handwriting of ordinances that was against you being blotted out, it's not talking about the Torah. People will argue with you and tell you, well, the Torah's been blotted out. Yeshua blotted out the Torah. He blotted out the law. That's not what happened. What it's talking about are the accusations that were made against you as an adulterous bride. And if you go back and read Numbers chapter 5, it's talking about when a bride was accused of adultery, the accusations against her were written on a parchment. Are you with me? And they were then commingled with the bitter waters, dust off the tabernacle floor, and poured into a cup called the cup of bitter waters, and she was forced to drink it. And if she was guilty, it tells us her belly and her thigh would rot out. She would become literally waste and barren on the inside, but if she was not guilty, she would produce seed. Well, what's happened when it tells us that the handwriting of ordinances against us was blotted out, this diminished mem is telling us it was at the Makom, the place where Yahweh visited us in the person of Messiah, that those accusations against us were diminished. Now, the opportunity is in front of you to stand underneath the accusation again. That's why you're being told in Revelation 17 and Revelation 18, don't join yourself with the harlot again. Some of you are still ensconced in that harlot system. And let me tell you this. I know people that have embraced some of the truth of the Torah and the Sabbath, and by times have a tendency to go back into the system. It's like a sow returning to the wallow or a dog to the vomit. You can't go back. I'm telling you, once you know the truth, you're required to operate, to walk in the truth. And if you don't, Revelation 18:4 tells you to come out of her, my people. If you don't come out of her, then the plagues that she's going to be visited with, you'll have visited against you as well. Well, this is what's being taught you in this Torah portion. The very first couple of verses, Yahweh's trying to teach you something. And then he goes into some instructions regarding the priesthood. And you know as well as I do that we were called originally as kings and priests. The entire nation of Israel was called to be a priesthood. The bride is supposed to be the priesthood. Amen? That's why I have a hard time with some of the quote-unquote denominations, and even in the Messianic community, denying women the opportunity to minister when it's the bride who's called as the priesthood. I have a hard time with that. They need to go back and examine Deborah and some of the other ladies throughout the Torah that were used to minister the truth of Yahweh's Word. That's another teaching altogether. Immediately after instructing Moses that what would proceed would consist of maintaining a perpetual fire by the priest, he gave him some instructions regarding the priestly garments and subsequently the responsibilities of the priest. And as I said earlier, and with just looking at this in the King James English, it will leave you in a semi-conscious state. Only the Hebrew language allows you to glean the hidden manna and hopefully, as I wrote in my notes, salivate for more. Would you like to look and see? Leviticus chapter 6 verse 10 says, and the priest, turn to your neighbor and tell him that's talking about me. And the priest shall put on his linen garment, and we're not going to get into every word in this sentence, this verse tonight, but we're going to look at some of the highlights, and I prayerfully would suggest that you go back and revisit some of these yourself. It says, and the priest shall put on his linen garment, and his linen breeches shall he put upon his flesh, and take up the ashes which the fire hath consumed with the burnt offering on the altar, and he shall put them beside the altar. Now, remember, there is a perpetual fire supposed to be burning here, and it's the priest that's charged with that. And let me remind you that for the last several weeks we've been talking about building the tabernacle. And I've told you how the tabernacle design was in the form of a man laid out on the earth. And if that's the case, this perpetual fire should literally represent what's told us in Proverbs 20:27, where it tells us that the spirit of man is the candle of Yahweh, the near of Yahweh, the light, the fire of Yahweh. And so basically, what the priest is charged with is keeping the candle of Yahweh lit on the inside of the tabernacle man. Well, you as an individual should be charged with the very same task. You should keep the fire burning perpetually. There's a whole lot of smoke and very little fire. And in some places, nothing but ashes left. Amen? Turn to your neighbor and tell him, he ain't talking about me. I want to break that word priest down. You've looked at it. There's no telling how many times in the past, but hopefully you'll see it in a different light this evening. It's Strong's number 3548, pronounced Cohen, and of course it means priest. But I want to look at the two-letter root, the hey, noon. The three-letter root stem is kaf, hey, noon. Say this with me, Kohen. I have a couple of Cohens in my pocket. No, that's not what we're talking about. Well, it might be good if you had a few priests in your pocket. Say amen right there. Let's move. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of churches that do have a few priests in their pocket. Well, let's move along real quick. The hey noon, pronounced hen, is a personal pronoun in Hebrew, and it's used to represent the English word they. And if you prefix the kaf in front of it, the kaf means like. So if you base it on how I've been breaking these Hebrew words apart, and I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination, this word could reveal the priestly functions as a mediator between Yahweh and men. And it's basically saying, the way that it's broken down, the kaf and the word hen, that we are like they are. Do you hear what I just said? The word Cohen literally means we are like they are. That's the function of the priest, to make us like they are. Well, who are the they here? It has to be Yahweh and Messiah. And so this is the responsibility that the priest is given. He's a mediator between Yahweh and the people for the express purpose of making the people like Yahweh. Yahweh is a consuming fire. We're told, we're admonished to be holy as He is holy. We're admonished to walk in perfection and righteousness as He does. Well, that's the priest's function. No wonder there's a lot of denominations, there's a lot of congregations that are dysfunctional. It's simply because the Cohen, the person standing in that priestly office, does not know how to make the congregation or to teach or train the congregation to be like Yahweh, simply because they don't know the Torah. Amen. Amen. It's one thing to teach the Word, and this is something I've been wrestling with the Father about for the last few weeks. He's gifted me to teach the Torah. I don't apologize for that. I know it's a fact. He's gifted me to teach the Torah. There's no reason that He would gift me to teach the Torah and not be able to demonstrate the supernatural with the Torah in the process. So what I've got to do is find out what I'm missing and where there's a disconnect here. And I firmly believe what He's doing is restoring the understanding of the Hebrew so that I can take what I've been teaching and demonstrating it. I'm a Cohen. Father spoke to me more than 10 years ago, long before I got in the Messianic movement, and I believe with all my heart it's as pertinent as if I was standing in front of Him then. He told me that I was a Levite. I didn't understand then. I'm beginning to get a little bit more of an understanding now. And by the way, if you've enjoyed this teaching, tune in to track 2 of this CD. Thank you for listening. Shalom Aleichem. Thank you for tuning back in with us at Manna from Heaven Ministries. We are live in the house, and we're talking about this week's Torah portion, Very basic, rudimentary. If you were to look at it from the surface, the title of it is Tzav, but it means in Hebrew to command. And I wish that more